When I bought the bullet feeder accessory, it came with the main bullet feeder unit, spacer block and bolt, actuator collar with a nut that's welded to it and bolt, a new bullet punch nut. You can see where they milled part of the nut away to create a little collar. This collar will go into actuator collar. A drop tube that will fit into here. An adapter. This adapter will actually go onto the drop tube, so you can add extensions to it. I don't think they sell the extensions. What I did was I bought some, I'm reloading 45 ACP, and this adapter, internal diameter here is 5/8 of an inch, so I needed the tube whose outside diameter is 5/8 of an inch, and whose inside diameter will allow the 45 ACP bolt to move freely. So this tube actually has an internal diameter of 1/2 inch and the outside diameter is 5/8. I did notice that the drop tube, I don't know if you can see, it has some rust on it. So I cleaned that off and put a very light coat of oil on the outside. I also cleaned the inside, but I didn't put any oil or grease or any kind of liquid on the inside. I also noticed on the main assembly, these two screws are a little loose, so I tightened them. And several of these screws were loose, so I tightened them. Not Gorilla tight, but just tighten them. These screws are adjustment screws, so they're not going to be tight. They're used when you're adjusting the bullet feeder to work with the loop sizer. The first thing the instructions say to do is to remove the current bullet punch nut, but before you do, make sure you've got the distance between the top of the die and the bottom of the punch. Because when you reassemble it, you need to get that same distance. Otherwise, when you start lubing, you're going to find out that you could be lubing the top of the bullet, the bottom of the bullet, because the alignment between the lube groove and the openings in the die is no longer correct. So make sure you have this distance. Either measure it, or in my case, when I first set this up, I used an adjustable parallel to get this distance. You would use like 11/16 inch wrench to loosen that. So I'll go ahead and take it off. And just set it aside because the old nut will not be used with the bullet feeder. Next thing we're going to do is install the actuator collar and its bolt and the special nut that came with the bullet assembly. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to run this bolt all the way down. Now, the nut has been milled, so it has like a throat or a collar to it, or a sleeve. That goes up and needs to go into the actuator collar. I'm just going to leave it loose now because what I want to do is check the distance between top of the die and bottom of the punch. I'm going to use my adjustable parallel I have earlier. You might want to take a look at the bottom of your punch and see if there's any kind of crud that's built up on the bottom, because that will affect that distance. So if there is, just take that off. Okay, I'm going to drop the punch a little bit. Well, I'm not going to use a wrench to really tighten it down because I need to know where this is going to go, because it's going to have to be adjusted this way in order to marry up with the bullet assembly. I'm going to leave it there for now. That is pretty good. Hopefully it can stay that way. If you recall from the video where I originally set up my loop size, I put this bolt into this opening just to prevent crud from building up in there to protect the threads. This bolt does not come with any of the Magma products. It's just something I did. So I have to remove this because this is where the spacer block goes. Now we're going to put on the main bullet feeder. This opening here goes around the die. This opening here goes through the spacer and into the heated base. If you don't have a heated base, then you'll need to use some kind of different kind of bolt and nut so it will go through whatever the top of your bench is. If you have difficulty installing, it may be because the arm is touching the bolt, and so you might have to lower the handle some to get things to line up. Now I'm going to take this bolt and run it through and tighten it. Check to make sure parts aren't touching, and if they're not, I want to tighten down this nut. First thing I'm going to do is make sure that this nut and its set screw does not touch the bullet feeder, which it's not. It's clear from it. The next thing I want to check is to make sure that the punch is not touching the die, which it is not. If the punch was touching the die, there's probably an issue between the alignment between the nut, the collar, and the unit. So you might have to take all of this off, take off the nut and the collar and reinstall it to make sure that there's no contact. If you're still getting contact, you might have to call Magma Engineering to get some guidance on what to do here, because you do not want the punch touching any part of your die. All right, I've got the new nut tightened down. It's kind of a juggling act. You need to make sure as you tighten it that the collar does not rotate away and pull the bolt from underneath this arm. And you also need to make sure as you tighten it down that the punch didn't turn and go up into the unit, which would increase this depth in here. So I'm going to pull out my adjustable parallel. Still got a nice fit to it. Next thing I want to do is I want to check again to make sure that there's no contact between this nut and the set screw and the bullet feeder assembly, and make sure there's no contact between the punch and the die. So I want to take this down slow. Okay, here's clear there. And no contact with the die. So that's good. All right, the next thing we're going to adjust is this bolt. The job of this bolt is when you raise the handle, it's going to push against this lever arm, which is going to push in this transfer bar and should cause the bolt to come out and drop into the die. You just need this high enough to cause that bolt to drop. And once it's there, then you'll take an Allen wrench and tighten it in to keep the bolt at that height. Now raise it some. As I raise the bar, you can see the transfer bar coming out. But as you can tell, it's not coming out enough, so I need to raise the bolt some more. All right, I used my 1/2 inch wrench to reach in and raise the bar. Let's take a visual check. Seems like it might work. Let's go ahead and set up the tube and put a bullet through it to see how well it works. Alright, here's the drop tube. The cutaway is of course going to face the opening so the bullets can come out. I'm going to raise this up. Make sure this is lined up reasonably correct. Now I'm just going to hand tighten this. I'm going to take bullet, drop it through, and see if it feeds in. And it doesn't look like it's feeding all the way into the transfer bar. There's probably an adjustment back here. But I can look through here and I can see the bullet is in the transfer bar, but not very cleanly. Let me work on that, then I'll get back and tell you what I had to do. Alright, I'm back. I actually did not make any adjustments. I believe what the issue was really two things. The number one was what I was trying to feed through there was a bullet that's already lubed, and I think the lube was getting caught up inside of there. And the other thing is, this is even though this is 45 ACP, this is a light bullet. It's only 160 grain. 185, 200 grain or more bullet would probably prevent that from happening, but we're not going to be feeding continuously lube bullets through it. So let's try this again using some unlubed bullets. So I'm going to put the drop tube back in. I'm going to look in. Looks like things are lined up. I'm just going to manually tighten this down. Okay, this is a 160 grain unlubed bullet. Let's see what happens. I'll drop another one in. Push that one out. Drop another one in. Alright, so this looks to be working, so I'm going to tighten this down a little bit more. I'm not trying to lube at this point, I'm just trying to get the equipment to work. But when I was feeding unlubed bullets through, it seems to be working quite well. And it's just going to be a snug tight. Right, there's a small bolt and nut back here. Doesn't look like you need to adjust the transfer bar. So I'm just going to make sure the nut is nice and snug. Okay, I've been using it for a while and had some feeding issues. So I removed the drop tube, look things over. And when I look inside, and this is a close-up, hopefully you can tell, it looks like the transfer bar, see if I can activate it, isn't quite lined up with the opening. So I'm going to, at the back of the assembly, there is a adjustment screw for the transfer bar. So I want to try adjusting that, and then using a Phillips head screwdriver. Alright, that looks better. So what I want to do is tighten the nut. The nut takes a 3/8 wrench. So I want to use it for a while and see if that fixes the issue. And in retrospect, got a couple suggestions. I don't know if you can see it. I'll show you a close-up of it. But as you activate the bullet feeder, this lever comes down on the factory bolt, which I'm holding in my hand. And again, I'll show you a close-up of it. You can see that a groove, even though this is a steel bolt, a groove is being cut into the head of the bolt. Another thing that happened was that I was using it, it actually started bending the collar. And I'll show you close up. Will show on the left is a fresh from the factory collar. On the right is a collar after I used it for less than 2,000 volts. You can see that there's a bend in the collar because the arm is essentially pushing back on the bolt, as you can see here. And of course, it's pushing up on the lever, which is causing this groove. So in hindsight, what I've done, I've actually removed this hex head bolt and replaced it really with two things. I replaced it with a socket head bolt. This allowed a major advantage in terms of installing the bolt, because getting the bolt at the right height by getting your wrench in there, it was hard to do. And it was cumbersome. You didn't have a lot of space. But with the socket head, in this case, I can just take a 1/4 inch Allen key, Allen wrench. This one has a ball end, and I can insert it in there quite easily and adjust it, get it to the height I need, and then tighten it down. This is so much easier than trying to get an open end wrench in there, which right now it can't even get in there because of these two obstructions. Kind of the problem I ran into is that the top of it is open. I want it closed. Well, I just went to the plumbing aisle of the big box hardware store and bought this copper end cap. And it just fits right on top. Now, I did adjust the height of this with the cap in place because it changed the distance so that as it goes forward, it probably activates the feed arm. But if it wasn't correct, it wasn't that cumbersome. Take the cap off, make my adjustment, put the cap on, test it, keep changing it. Once I got it right, tighten this down. And you might say, well, copper is softer than this bolt. So what happens if you start getting a groove in your copper cap? Well, that's easy. Take this copper cap off, get a new one, put it on top, and you're good to go. So I hope this information has been useful to you, and thank you for watching.